In this video, I'm going to show you how to remove a damaged tube from your Umax heat exchanger and replace it. I'll walk you step by step the process to get that Umax heat exchanger up and running again. Let's talk about the contents of your spare parts box kit. The first items you'll notice is the tube nut itself, tube nut plugs, the O-rings, backup rings, the torque driver, the Krytox lubricant, your gaskets. The gaskets will be specific to your heat exchanger and may not look exactly like this. The tube nut bit, the tube nut removal tool, and finally the ring positioning tool. There are a few additional tools not included in your box kit that will be helpful during this process. A socket wrench or equivalent for removing the clamp plates to adjust the tube sheet, a gauge for hydrostatic testing, and a ratcheting T-handle to remove the tube nuts. When setting up the torque screwdriver, you will find the torque requirement on the assembly drawing. On the assembly drawing, you will notice a blow-up of detail of the O-ring assembly. In this case, the nominal torque is 30 inch-pounds, but it will be specific to your heat exchanger. To adjust the torque setting on the screwdriver, pull the lower end cap and rotate until the red line on the gauge lines up with the required torque setting on your assembly drawing. Once you've flushed your unit and feel safe to disassemble, you'll want to first remove the clamp plate. You'll remove the bolts in a reverse radial pattern. We've already got started here, so I'll just finish the last few. When the clamp plate is removed, the PTFE line surfaces are exposed. Care should be taken not to damage the liner face, particularly where the gasket serrations are. Once you've identified the tube that needs to be replaced, take your tube nut bit in your ratcheting T-handle or other appropriate tool and place the tube nut bit into the face of the tube nut. Apply forward pressure as to not strip out the tube nut face as you begin to unscrew the tube nut. Once the tube nut is removed on one tube sheet, you will have to remove the tube nut on the opposite tube sheet for the corresponding tube. At that point, you'll be able to push the tube out from the opposite side. In this case, you see one of the backup rings and O-rings came out with the tube. On the opposite side, the backup rings and O-rings will still be in the tube nut pocket and will have to be removed manually. When you're ready to insert the new tube into the heat exchanger, apply a small amount of the Krytox lubricant to the leading end of the tube. Insert the tube slowly, being sure not to damage it as it moves through the baffle cage assembly. Once the tube is inserted, ensure that no damage was done to the leading edge. If a tube is chipped or damaged, it should be replaced. Leave enough working space on the tube to be able to apply the O-rings and backup rings. Take your positioning tool, bevel side first, and apply a small amount of lubricant onto the backup rings, then the O-ring, and then finally another backup ring. Make sure the smaller diameter of the moving portion of the positioning tool is up against the backup rings, and then slide the rings onto the tube, leaving enough room for the tube nut to sit flush against the edge of the tube. Insert the tube nut by hand initially to avoid cross-threading and damage to the threads on the tube sheet. You'll then take your torqued screwdriver In this case, 30 inch-pounds is the appropriate setting from the assembly drawing, and begin to tighten the tube nut. The screwdriver will click to let you know when you've reached the nominal torque. On the opposite tube sheet, we don't have as much working room because the tube sits inside the tube nut pocket. But we'll begin by placing the backup ring, O-ring, and backup ring on the positioning tool just as we did the other side. And we'll locate the positioning tool on the tube inside the pocket and slide the positioning tool handle forward all the way. Now when I remove the positioning tool, I'm going to ensure that the secondary backup ring is still sitting around the tube and did not fall off into the tube nut pocket. Insert the tube nut by hand initially to avoid cross-threading and any damage to the threads on the tube sheet. I will then take the tube nut and torque screwdriver, just as I did the other side, and reapply it to the tube sheet. And that's it. Now you can repair and maintain the Umax heat exchanger at your location. And if you have any questions or concerns, please give us a call. We'd love to walk you through it and help you in any way we can.